It's time for Pure Performance.
Get your stopwatches ready. It's time for Pure Performance with Andy Grabner and Brian Wilson. Sorry, I'm just trying to start a little more energetic than last time.
¿Cuál es tu problema? Still the same thing.
It's about an hour later and the coffee's kicked in, so I wanted to start a little more energetic this time. Sorry about that. I know we do goofy things at the beginning, but it's...
No, you do goofy things, not we. You.
That's right, because I don't think you understand what goofy is.
Thank you.
Yes. We do it all for you, the listener, to try to make it entertaining in our own pathetic way. And there's nothing better than self-deprecating humor, I guess. Anyway, we are back with Anita. Oh my gosh, I just totally pulled an Austrian move there. I added an R to Anita's name. And that's just going back to, Java, which, yeah. Anyhow, it's an inside joke, everybody. So we're back with Anita, and we're going to continue our conversation. And, of course, Andy's here because it's, a few minutes later. We're giving away all the inside secrets of how we do the podcast right now.
It's okay.
Right. So, Andy, would you like to use your wonderful summary skills that we just talked about to just, in case somebody didn't hear the last episode, what did we speak about last episode?
Well, first of all, you should go back and listen to the first episode because it was, I think, very enlightening on how Bernd, who set up the goal of potentially being able to deploy a change into production within an hour, actually transformed the Dynatrace engineering team over the last couple of years. So now we do deployment every 2 weeks. So we deploy sprint builds every 2 weeks into production, but we have the chance, because we have an automated deployment pipeline, to be able to deploy stuff into production within an hour if necessary. And I think what Anita also told us was very interesting, like what the role of her team is as providing the pipeline, listening to the individual development teams that need to push code through the pipeline. Actually, there are features, so we're organized in feature teams, which now actually brings me to the second part and the second topic of this episode now is, and I want to call it a life cycle of a feature, and very important, it's feedback loop, because Anita, you stressed the fact very, very clear, and also Bernd said, not only do we want to do continuous delivery or continuous deployment, we want to also have a continuous feedback loop so that our feature teams actually know if the feature that they built is A, working well, B, is used by users, and C, do we need to maybe optimize it because it's not running as smoothly as possible. So Anita, enlighten us, please, on what's the life cycle of a feature. How does this work? What do development teams need to do to actually get these feedback loops in place? How do you help them? And now I stop talking because I want to hear you talk.
A lot of questions, and this needed a long answer, I think. But where should I start? What do I have to team to do in order to get the feature in place or to get the feedback? So the one thing is, first of all, we are in a very lucky situation. We are building a monitoring tool. So our dev teams and our developer, of course, very familiar with monitoring, the application monitoring, and how you do this in the right way. So actually, they start with the right mindset already and know what's needed to monitor a feature. This is one very, very positive thing. The other thing is there's a big difference as compared with the way we worked before. So before we released twice a year. And typically as developer, when you build here a new feature, you have half a year time to build a feature, and then it's out the door and everybody gets this feature. So it's GA'd immediately to all our customers. So this is the typical feature life cycle when you release twice a year. And we have with continuous delivery a big advantage. So you can think about, or you can actually be very creative how you can bring out the feature. For example, you decide, okay, you bring it partly out, so you focus on a minimum version or on the key values and make it opt-in for customers and try to find out who opt in and how the customers are using that, and then go ahead. So you can start with a very minimum version and do not have a very detailed idea how this feature has to look like. Also, you can monitor the performance in production because just a few customers are using that, and then start to optimize this. So it's a much cooler way from a development perspective to bring a feature out. You can define your own stages. You can define what's next once you have the feedback, and do not have a perfect plan for the whole feature. That's really a great change, and really I think a change the developers are very happy with, to see how the feature is working out there, and then decide how to go ahead together with the product management and so on. So this is maybe the first big difference and the first big change.
Can I ask a quick question here? Because obviously, in order for this to work, the architecture of the software and the pipeline also needs to support that, right? And I think
right.
It's hard to say, hey, I have a big monolithic application and now I'm doing this, because obviously the architecture and the frameworks that you guys have been building enable developers to do exactly that, rolling out a feature, enabling it for a certain part of users, or doing the opt-in, opt-out, feature flagging, feature toggling, A/B testing. That's something you had to build into the software itself.
Yeah, that's true. It's not built by my team, but actually we had very at the beginning the request, okay, this is a feature I like that customers are opt-in, or I just like to turn it on for two early access customers. And then we actually built this feature toggle framework that everybody can now use. So this is how this gets created. So we work with feature toggles, with feature flags, so that you as developer can decide what stages you like to have, and how you can bring this feature out. Of course, product management is involved in that as well, because sometimes it's sometimes it's a feature toggle. So we announce this maybe on our blog that there is a new feature out there, or there's a new UI screen. Show this, switch to this new UI screen, and then you can switch back. So there are so many different ways how to bring a new feature out. And actually, what we really try is to push the developers to really be creative, how you can bring a feature out, how you can stage it, and how you can consume feedback to decide what's next, to bring the right focus in.
You know, I think these feedback loops are really amazing too, in a way. I hearing the story goes back to, a lot of my stories go back to my previous job, right? It was towards the Agile was just starting to take off, so it was very monolithic, and towards the end we had a new feature that was being rolled out, and it was this really, really large feature, trying to make a community kind of section. They were trying to jump on top of the concepts of Facebook, like, hey, instead of just having message boards, let's make it a community. And it was this gigantic release that went way, way, way over time, was just plagued with problems, and we finally got it shipped, and people weren't using it, but back then we didn't have what's available now, where you have not only customer feedback from being able to see how they're using the site because of things like UEM or some other sorts of, really deep dive user interaction pieces, but also tying that into the performance of the components to find out maybe people aren't using it because there's a performance issue, or maybe they're not using it because they don't like it, right? Performance is fine, so maybe it's just because they don't like it. So you can do all those toggles and switches. It's a much different era now, I think, and I think it's just really amazing how this can all be done now, and I love hearing about that. Because
I also think it's what I thought, Anita, what you brought up is the blog. So it's kind of also a new way of socializing new features, using the direct channel to the end user to say, hey, there's new stuff. This is what we've built so far. Try it out if you want to. Give us feedback. And obviously, on the one side, you get feedback through the tool itself or the software itself because you've built monitoring in, but then also using the other channel of proactively say, hey, give us feedback. We want to work with you because we want to build stuff that you actually need and that actually helps you forward.
That's definitely cool. We also like, so when I say we, really development likes our answers forum, for example. It's for more than 1 year, it's already official, so everybody can look in this. And we really like to have the discussion with our own customers, and developers like to have the discussion there. So this is really cool feedback we get there as well. So direct feedback, and sometimes changes as well the understanding of our own product, so that the customers try to use it somehow in a totally different way we never thought about. And sometimes we find out, okay, this is really cool. We should think about this and maybe innovate in this area. So that's really cool.
I wonder if there has to be a new term, because what you were just saying there is that the customers are interacting somewhat directly with development, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of takes DevOps to a whole different level. It's yeah, again, where things are these days is just really, really amazing, and I glad to hear we have so much of this going on.
Yeah. I think the industry calls it user-centric development or customer-centric development or innovation, where you basically put the customer in the middle and then ask them what they want, and you start building it, and then you roll out the first stages, and then with feedback from them, move it into the right direction. I always use the example now, the way we used to take pictures years ago. We had our cameras with a 24 picture film, and you took pictures, and then you, weeks later when the film was full, you developed it, you got the feedback, and then you were surprised that the pictures didn't turn out as well as you thought. Now you take a picture, you immediately have the feedback on your iPhone. You can even, or Android, I don't want to dismiss the other parts of the world that are not using iPhone. So you take the picture on the phone itself, you can apply filters like color filters, and then you post it on Instagram or Facebook, getting the feedback directly minutes after you developed, quote unquote, that feature from your friends, if they like it or not. And if they like it, you may take more pictures in the same scene where you are right now. If they don't like it, maybe you are removing it because you don't want to get negative feedback. But that's kind of the difference now. And that's the cool thing. So continuous innovation, optimization, that's what I call it. Now, Anita, we know that, so we do feature flags. What are the technical vehicles that the engineering teams then really get the feedback? I'm sure they're using Dynatrace, obviously, on the one side, but I'm sure there's more what they do. What do they do?
So actually, we continuously innovate on this area. So they bring up always new ideas, what feedback they like to have. But personally, I categorize this in different areas. The one is the typical feedback. Also, operations is typically looking at. These are performance metrics like CPU, memory, GC suspension time, whatever you have there, these typical metrics. Then the other area is this custom metrics development built-in. For example, monitor queue sizes of special queues, so that the queue is not too long, or that there are not a lot of elements skipped out of the queue or something like this. This is custom metrics. We also use here Dynatrace to dashboard them, to monitor this, to alert on them. And the other thing we are currently really focused on is log feedback. So I have to give you here a bit a background why I call it log feedback and not log analytics or something like this. Before we started this, log was somehow a different method they used, because typically developers add log when they start with a feature. So this is because it's very simple to add some log lines, to add some info logs, severe warning or debug logs, so that you can turn it on. But typically they just use it on their local environment or some small staging environment, because looking through log files is very time consuming. And the other area where they were used to, or where developers are used to work with logs, is when something severe is happening and they get somehow an archive from an operations guy or something, and then they have to analyze the logs. And this is then more a war room scenario where they really have to look all through all the log files, that try to find out that they have the right log files, that they look on the right time frame, filter out logs that are not the root cause, maybe just a symptom, or where severe logs that were happening weeks ago and still happening and had nothing to do with the severe issue happening now, and so on. So this was the area where developers were used to work with logs at the beginning when they develop feature or change something, and in this severe war room scenario. But we find out that logs actually are very, very helpful because you have this in a very early stage of a feature, when a feature is not really fully ready and and the whole metrics, the feedback metrics, custom measures or so on are not fully ready, or actually the development and product management have not yet the full idea what we have really to monitor on this feature. But we have logs. And the tricky thing on logs, there's really many logs. First of all, we have different stages. We have our dev stage, we have staging environment, we have load test, and then we have this big production environments. When you like to look on all these logs somehow on a daily basis, you invest your whole day maybe, and it's not a funny thing. So what we did, for example, and this brings me to the example where I said, okay, sometimes we build something special for it, and sometimes we improve our own product. And if you know Dynatrace, we have now log analytics in there. And this is also a reason why we have this in there, because we found out we need it for ourselves. We need this as a continuous feedback, as a continuous monitoring, so that devs really are able to continuously see how many of their warning logs or whatever are appearing in the different stages, and maybe also alert on that. And therefore they currently have to investigate every day about 5 minutes just to find out if in all stages everything is fine, although they have no special metric for this, or if there is something strange, and they have to deeper look into that. So log analytics is a very cool, fast feedback loop. They typically implement that, and it's very easy to consume that if you have a cool tooling for that. Yeah, this is an important point I want to bring in. I know that log analytics is sometimes always boring because it's many files and you have to really combine them and so on.
No, I think it's not. I think it's not boring at all. Actually, I think it's great that you bring it up, because I think and you said we actually, based on the need that you brought up, we actually build more log analytics features into our products. And that's the cool thing about what you said in the beginning. We are so fortunate that we are a monitoring company, and we use our own products to make the life of a software engineer that works in a DevOps, NoOpsy kind of setting, cloud native. I'm throwing out all the cool words now. So we basically innovated not only the way we develop software, but we also innovated our software that helps us, but also will help our customers in the end. And I remember in the early days of Dynatrace on the AppMon, one of the coolest features I always thought is actually capturing log messages in the context of a pure path. So if instead of looking at thousands and megabytes and gigabytes of log files, you can say, hey, there's a log message that is now coming up. And not only that, but you also see the pure path. You see where it actually happens. And you guys obviously now also built this into our new Dynatrace SaaS and managed offering to put log analytics as one key component into the mix, because it just helps. It helps figuring out if something is wrong or not.
Yeah, I think that's a great feature. I've always loved that one too, because instead of coming through every single log, you would see this error 500 times, right? And then you could drill down to every single place that occurred. I've always loved that. So it's awesome.
And the cool thing Andy was mentioning already, I fully forgot about that, because it's somehow natural for us to really have a click away the information how many customers or real users are affected by a special warning log. So as a developer, I see, okay, oh my God, there's something going crazy. I have a lot of warning logs. It's not as expected, and check how many real users are affected of that. So is there a response time degradation because of that, or something else? So just a click away to have this in one tool, and then okay, there's no real user affected. I can sit back, relax, and think about what's doing next. and how I bring maybe a change very fast to production in order to avoid a customer effect. So this is really cool, and not having different tools and combining the information and trying to find out that I look on the very same time zone. Maybe you have a different time zone on different hosts, and you have to combine them and always look on the wrong time. So it was really time consuming before we had that.
And maybe I have to say this now, because it's just I want to say this now.
Okay.
A little pun to our friendly competition out there. I think one of the cool things is if you see log statements are coming in, and then you can say what is the end user actually that experienced that. Not only do we see the end user, but we also now see the full path of the end user until they hit that point. To your point, what you said earlier, because you said sometimes you're surprised how our users are actually using our software in a total different, unintended way. And because our claim to fame has always been we want to capture every single transaction all the time, every single click, we can actually say, look at this. Those people that actually get the warning are those that are using the feature in this way versus the other way. And I think that's the cool thing of having, building monitoring tools and now being able to help development feature teams not only to understand there is a problem, but also understand how end users ended up at that problem, because maybe it's a total different path that nobody thought about. And this is only possible if you have all the data available. And that's kind of my little pun to our friendly competition out there. You have to have the PO app. You have to have everything all the time. Sorry.
Yeah, that's true. Nothing to add, Andy.
Yeah. So that means logs are critical. That's awesome. That's great. Now, what happens if they are developing a new feature and they see something is totally not right? Then it's obviously great if you can actually deploy changes into production very fast, right? What Bernd said, within an hour, it should theoretically be possible to deploy a change. Is this then a mechanism that the feature teams are using? If they deploy something and they see, oh my God, hell breaks loose, then they change it? Mm-hmm.
Definitely. We have such a fast lane in order to give development and the whole team the possibility to really react very fast on that. We often decide not to use that. We only do this in an emergency case. So the important point, or the most important component actually we have out there is our so-called agent. So this agent is sometimes injected in the customer application, and means when this type of component is going crazy, we in the worst case affect the customer application. And this is then really an emergency case. And there we have to really be very, very fast in fixing this in order to not affect the customer's application. And this is where we have this goal to bring out a fix within 1 hour. Of course, this means 1 hour after the commit, and not 1 hour, okay, you have a few minutes time to think about a fix and then push it out. Maybe it's then the wrong fix. So it's, of course, important to have within this 1 hour also a test pipeline, to have the important tests there to guarantee that the quality that is going out in such an emergency case is fine, and that do not make the situation worse. Mm-hmm. This is what we are currently trying with bringing a fix out within 1 hour is really an emergency case. Sometimes we decide not to be so fast because, for example, we have also a component we call cluster that has tenant capabilities, means there are a lot of customers on it. And for example, if I see that there is a UI screen broken for 1 or 2 customers, and we have a fix available very fast and we could deploy it immediately, we sometimes decide to do a longer test cycle or to bring it first in a staging environment to look not only if it's fixing this broken UI, to also verify that there's no side effect for the other customers. So sometimes we somehow pause it and look deeper in it in order to avoid that we affect other customers that are not yet affected or make the situation worse. But we have the option to be very fast when it's needed. That's an important point.
And I wanted to ask here, traditionally, in the old school, it was always if something was broken, you roll it back. And as CI/CD has progressed, you had your Googles, your Amazons, all the big players started abandoning the idea of a rollback. They would roll forward with a fix. It sounds like from what you're describing that within Dynatrace, are we fully on board and practicing a roll forward with a fix, or do we still have sometimes a rollback in place?
Yeah, it depends on the component. When we talk about the component that is not running in the customer application or the agent component, we only, besides that, we only do roll forward. We do only roll forward on cluster side and all the other components beside the agent. The reason is here as well is that a rollback is something that sometimes can go wrong as well. Think about you have a change in there where you change the database schema,
right,
or some new values in the database, and the old version will not understand that. So maybe a rollback can make the situation really worse. So therefore, we don't do this on the cluster side. On the agent side, we allow also a rollback, so means the customer is allowed to install also an older version because we are compatible with old agent version. At the moment, we have agent versions out there. These are nearly 1.5 years old, and it's working perfectly. So we allow customers to do that in order to help themselves in case they see something in staging or something like this, or also in production, they are allowed to do this. But of course, we try to fix it on the new version because nearly all customers out there are using the new version of the agent, and going back is actually not a solution. And also a good point is here, I remember the time where I started at Dynatrace, and typically the severe support tickets that are coming in were agent issues, so when the customer application is affected. And it was always a really time-consuming and heavy thing when the customer had a very old agent. Because what the developer had to do here is, first of all, checking out a very old branch, try to remember what the heck this code is doing there, what I implemented 2 years ago, no idea, and try to find out what side effects his fix would have for other parts of this component. So it's really hard to make a decision what's a secure fix. If you have an issue on a very recent version, so something you implemented 4 weeks ago, you're typically very fast in providing a secure, robust fix that helps because you have it fresh in your mind, what this agent or what this component is doing, and you're very fast. And this is what I see in a daily business. We have more than 85% of the agents out there are on a recent version. And when we have an issue on a recent version, the agent teams are very, very fast to really provide high quality fixes. If it's an old version, it takes longer.
Yeah. So actually, and this is interesting too. Like, it just reminds me of always, I think the claim to fame from Apple is always that they get their users very fast on the latest versions of the iOS, which makes it much easier for them and also for application developers to know that 80% of the iOS community is going to be on the latest version, like within days after the update. And where on Android, it's sometimes a little challenging. When we talk with Android developers, it's always hard to support all these different versions that are out there, and yeah. So having things on the latest versions makes it a lot easier. Hey, Anita, I have now the feedback loops from production are amazing, right? And it's needed because basically when you develop a feature, you need to see how they're using it out there. But what are the feedback loops that you have in the pipeline? Because what I'm always preaching, and what I've been preaching over the last years, is you need to inject quality into the pipeline and actually not only look at functional results in making a build fail and use that as a feedback loop, but also injecting what I call architectural checks and performance and scalability checks into the pipeline. So for instance, if you run some unit tests, some integration tests, and all of a sudden you figure out that feature is now allocating 20% more memory or is making 50% more database calls, then this is also, even though functionally everything is correct, it should not be pushed forward because it will mean the feature is that much more costly out there. Is this also something you do in your pipeline, that you're doing these checks?
Yeah, we are doing these checks, but we are doing this not for every commit. It would be too much. What we are having in place is we have daily load test environments where we're doing that. So we have load simulators where we really have the very same synthetic load and can really say, okay, it's now 20% more, and it's not because the usage is different here or the load is somehow different. And we have also a bit longer running load tests. So this 3 or 4 days load environments. This is actually needed because we have our agents there, and sometimes you see an effect when it's running for days. So we have actually these 2 environments where we get daily feedback of a change and can daily react on that. And then we have this longer running load test environments where we check that. So yes, we do this, but we do not have this implemented in this pipeline that is where every commit is running through. Mm-hmm. We do this on a daily basis, actually.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, and it's actually, it also aligns. I mean, Brian mentioned we had Adam from Capital One on the call like recently, and he was also talking about the pipeline, and he was basically talking about the problem that they do a lot of load testing at the very end, but these load tests run, they take 15 minutes, half an hour. And if you would execute these load tests on every single commit, and you get 10 commits per hour, but the load test takes an hour, then obviously it's hard to fit in all of that. And there's 2 ways to mitigate that. One is they parallelize load tests, right? They use Docker containers to actually spawn up multiple kind of load testing environments in parallel. But on the other side, what they actually also do is they say, instead of always running a full load test, we are shifting left some of these performance checks by just running unit and functional tests, which we do anyway, but then inject tools, that can give us metrics like number of database statements, number of objects allocated, because a lot of these performance problems can be detected early on when looking at the execution of these unit and integration tests. And therefore you can stop bad builds early. That's kind of our story. Stop bad builds early, because you can already, by looking at the right metrics in your unit test environment and your functional test environment, already detect a lot of problems that you would otherwise find in longer load tests. But I totally agree with you, and I like the approach that you guys have, that you have your longer running tests where you can see long-time effects, and things like caches, and things like synchronization problems, and things like the queues that kind of compile up over the course of the time. These are things obviously where you need longer running load tests, and that's cool that you guys do that as well. Nice.
So now I know what your question was pointing on. I also remember the slide you were presenting typically when you were telling the story. Mm-hmm. I completely forget about that, because I said at the beginning we were already good in continuous integration, and actually this is how we do our big tests to monitor as well the performance of our big test, and if there is a difference, and somehow a baselining we are doing there. So this is something, of course, we still do.
Perfect. Yeah, that's awesome. And I know I always bring the example in my presentation these days. I always show a picture of our pipeline state UFO, or UFO as we call it in German, but the pipeline state UFO, that is kind of this funky little thing that hangs on in our hallways and basically represents the status of our pipeline, the current sprint, and also the trunk, and the green, the yet, and the kind of the shades between. And I think that's pretty cool that we actually show the status of our pipelines at any given point in time to our engineering teams in the hallways, right? I always tell the story, if I'm a developer at Dynatrace and I hit the commit button and then I walk over to the coffee machine and then all of a sudden I see that this light goes from green to red, I know I'd rather get my coffee fast and run back because I just broke the build. So that's the fastest feedback loop. And that's what I love so much about it. I think that's also why a lot of people like the UFO idea. Some other companies I've seen, they have like these like emergency lights that you normally see with firefighters, like brings it to an extreme, but it's like.
And I do want to mention, because we had a chuckle about UFO versus UFO, and I do want to defend our way of saying it, only because the letters stand for unidentified flying object, so it is a 3-letter acronym. It's not really a word. I just had to go on record with that because, Anyway, I wanted one thing I wanted to bring up. In the last episode at the end, and we're just about at the end again. I wanted to talk about that whole reaction to the idea of being ready for a release or being release ready every hour. Should it come to it. But I wanted to frame it a little bit different, right? So I kind of wanted, Anita, I wanted to find out, what maybe your reaction and maybe some of your peers' reaction was to that announcement. But now that you're there, looking back, how do you see, what that transformation was? Was it as tough and crazy and ludicrous as you thought? And did you have to, work through a whole ton or, a whole ton of obstacles and, grand enemies, if this were a video game kind of thing? Or did it actually go a lot smoother maybe than you expected, because within the process of getting there, maybe you had feedback loops of your own in that process fitting? How would you describe that whole experience?
Yeah, I can very well remember the meeting. So it was we call it all dev meeting, so that the whole development is watching it, when Bernd was announcing this goal. And I can very well remember my thoughts, and I can very well remember what I thought when I saw in the faces of my development colleagues. Let's start with what I thought. I personally thought, okay, it's good to have challenging goals, but we never achieve this 1 hour. So if we have one day, we can be happy with that. So this was my personal thought on that. But we were actually used to have challenging goals in order to be happy to achieve 50%, because it's then better as others are doing that. So this was my mindset on that. Of course, we were fighting for this, of course. And then I looked in the faces of my development colleagues, and we also talked after this session at the coffee machine. And actually, the common opinion was like, okay, Bernd is somehow crazy. Everybody is allowed to have dreams. Let's see what the future brings. This was actually the reaction on that. But to be honest, I'm really happy that Bernd was really announcing this in a way. We have to do this. There's no excuse. We have to fight for it. We have to find a solution for it. Because 2 years later, actually 1 year later, we were already there. So we really found a solution for that, and we really were fighting for that. And the biggest trick we did there is actually we all read the whole continuous delivery Bibles that are out there, and all these Bibles were saying, okay, the trunk has to be release ready at every time. And we never thought that this is possible, because we know that it is challenging enough to have every sprint, every 2 weeks, something we can deploy and where we can demo all our new features. So this was challenging enough. But we were already good in that. So we did a little trick and said, okay, this was what the outcome of every 2 weeks, what we need to demo a sprint. This is the base that have to be release ready at every time. And on top of that, we built a very fast build and test pipeline to bring fixes out. So it means every 2 weeks we made it release ready and bring these new features out and be fast in fixing this on top of this code level. So this was the place where we started. I think as we officially go out with our product, we were in a range of 2 or 3 hours bringing a fix out on top of this base. And once we had that, we started with the project that the trunk is always deploy and release ready, at least in our internal stage, and everybody's dependent on that. And we are good in that as well. At the moment, we nearly every time are somehow ready to deploy directly from the trunk. We don't do this, but we are already there. We could already start with this project. I don't know if we want that. Hopefully Bernd is not hearing that. The next challenging goal. But yeah, this was actually the feeling. So we did a little bit a trick. So we don't try to copy the unicorn. So as Andreas is often telling this story. So we made our own whatever, not unicorn, our own little pony or whatever, and this was working.
My little pony. So the interesting thing too is obviously a lot of this was all because of the hard work and the skill set and the desire and drive for you and all the development teams to get this done. That's obviously probably one of the most important pieces of getting this done. But what I found interesting in between your talk and our talk with Bernd, I think one of the key drivers for any organization to really get this done is not just having the talent on the ground who can execute this, but it's having the support and the drive from the upper level, from the C-level, to say, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to support you in doing that. And then that then gives you all the support, the ability, the maybe even like saying, hey, some things are going to slow down while we make this transition, but everyone is supporting this in the entire organization. And I think that's really one of the biggest keys to achieving this kind of thing.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Without the focusing that Bernd introduced in all our minds, that we have to focus on being fast, automate everything, no manual touches. Without that, we would not be there where we are. Because sometimes it meant that we have to postpone features. Sometimes it meant, okay, although everything is breaking our staging environment and we cannot bring a single feature out, everybody is focusing on the process that it's not allowed to demo locally or whatever. So this was really, really important to have Bernd here, to have the management here, having the very same mindset, not trying to find a easier way.
Yeah.
Hey, I know we are almost at the end from our time budget perspective, but I think I want to propose multiple things here. First of all, I want to propose you come back, do another podcast, because what we have not touched upon at all, a little bit maybe, but not at all, not that much as people would maybe like as a new episode, is the tooling. I think it would be very interesting to talk a little bit of what tools do we actually use to actually automate the whole pipeline. So that could be another topic. The second thing I want to propose to you now, Anita, is I know we're doing a webinar on this as well in November, but I think we should get you on the big stage and we should have you at Perform 2017. So this is a shout out now, first of all, to you. Hopefully you say yes.
Yeah, let's see. We'll think about it.
Because it's going to be in February in Vegas at our annual conference. So hopefully Vegas, that buys you over. But I think it would be great to show this to our whole user audience out there. And to conclude all of this, I want to just say one more thing that I know you've, like a week or 2-3 weeks ago, you had a discussion with a guy from a German university, I believe. I think it was a university. He was a student, and he's doing some research on kind of the maturity level of companies when it comes to CI/CD and DevOps. And yeah, right. I thought I know you were very busy, but you took the time and then you did it. And because you also said, not only do I want to do it because I want to help students out there, but I also want to know how we are and how we relate to other companies that do CI/CD and DevOps or NoOps. And so this is kind of my last question that I have to you. What was your reaction on that? Or what did you get as a feedback from this guy who is doing the study?
Yeah, it was really very, very interesting. So as you mentioned, I was really busy. So we did this talk, I think, last week. So it was one of the last companies he added to his final work. And yeah, he had really a lot of questions, a lot of very detailed questions. I think it was because he talked to so many companies already before. And the final note, what I found very interesting was that he said, okay, he has to adjust now his metrics, his model, because we do not suit on this model. We are so high, we need to adjust this to make a place for us at the very top. So this is very, very nice. And I said to him, okay, make it a bit higher so that there's some space, because we want to improve as well.
Yeah.
That's rather cool to hear that.
Yeah, I thought so too. And obviously, and as you said, I think we can be proud of what we've achieved, but there's still room for improvement, and this is great. And it's just great to know that we have a good team and a great leadership that supports all of this. Brian, I think I'm speechless, and I'm happy And I'm done with my questions.
I'm
what
done.
About you?
I'm done too. I just wanted to say, congratulations to Anita and all the teams.
The whole team especially.
Yeah, it's not one person, but obviously, but awesome job to you regardless, or awesome job for you relating it. However you want to take it. I know people like to be humble, as they should be, but whole team has been great, and I'm just very impressed. Yeah, I've always known we've done things like this, but I've never heard the rich detail, and what kind of gave me that mind-blowing moment sort of was just the concept of a monitoring tool using its own self to monitor itself as it's going through in the improvement phases and all. It's almost like the snake eating itself, but and adding improvements to the tool to improve that monitoring, which then feeds back. It's almost like, pointing a video camera at a television monitor that's recording itself, and you get that ultimate feedback loop and Doctor Who type of special effects. But it's amazing, and I think you're all great, and that's what I love about all this.
And I think all of our listeners, if they want to experience on their own, they can just go to Dynatrace.com and sign up for the Dynatrace SaaS free trial, because that's basically the product, right, that you guys have been working on. So I think as the first 1,000 hours are on us anyway. So if you want to experience first class, no ops monitoring to monitor your own software, right?
And what's the you were talking about releasing updates on the blog. What is that blog that you're for the Dynatrace SaaS updates? And hey, here's a new feature. Is that a public?
It's a public blog, so we use this actually as release notes. So we blog about our improvements and do not provide boring release notes.
And what's that URL?
It's on the website as well. The URL is still blog.waxit.com, but we switch it to blog.dynatrace.com very soon. Not sure if you know that there was a renaming from Dynatrace Waxit to simply Dynatrace, so Dynatrace SaaS.
Yep, so, there's been a lot to talk about all that.
It's linked on the website, so you will find it.
All right, excellent. And if anybody who's listening to this has a story of their own for a transformation and would like to share it with us, we'd love to have you on as a guest. Feel free to contact us through either Twitter, #PurePerformance@Dynatrace, or send us an email, pureperformance@dynatrace.com. Always looking for guests. And Anita, I would also love to have you back on. I'll second Andy's motion there. So.
Yeah.
See you.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.